Richards trying to scoot in there alone. It pinballs to the crease.
Let's get it.
Oh my God! Here we go.
You're listening to the Pod Street Bullies Podcast with your hosts, Derek.
How you gonna get it, Bobby?
John. Matt Casey.
Unnecessary, but totally necessary.
And Cody.
What's not to love?
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Pod Street Bullies. My name is Derek, and that's where John would say that he's here too, but he's not.
It's a great episode.
Right? I can't tell you how happy Hoagie is right now. How happy are you, Hoagie? Let's talk about that because you never get time to actually talk.
I mean, this is probably the only optimistic thing of the episode.
It's a Christmas miracle.
Right? This is Hoagie's Christmas episode here.
Pretty much.
As we've alluded to, Hoagie's here. Also, Matt Casey. What's happening, guys?
Hey, good to be back. It was a rough week last week on the on not only in the Flyers front but in the Casey household here. We got decimated by an illness, which I think somehow I spit over the computer screen to John, and now he's got it. So,
oh God, that means I'm next, doesn't it?
I haven't been slapped in the junk
Sounds
by
like
a
going
disease
around.
like this in a while, man. It was bad.
I got hit hard, but it was more so of a hangover than anything. Saturday morning, good Lord, I was useless. Our family does a Black Friday poker night. And so you could imagine how I felt Saturday morning, 5:30. I'd have rather took a bullet to my brain. And my wife's like, let's go get our Christmas tree and let's decorate the house and you can hang the lights. And I'm like, I'd rather just tie the lights in a noose and hang my
so we had my son's 6th birthday party. It would have been 2 Sundays ago. It was scheduled. It was like a 9 a.m. birthday party, which I'm sure all the parents really appreciated.
like we're never telling our kids they have to be friends with that guy's kids.
It was at Chuck E. Cheese. We had the whole place to ourselves. It was great.
Then yeah.
And my son, he got the illness too, and he's sitting there crying, vomiting in the toilet at 6 a.m, being like, oh, I'm so excited for my birthday. And we're like, dude, we are canceling this thing. We are not having a birthday party.
Oh no.
Anyway, speaking of puking, let's get to the Flyers.
Right. Let's get to the first topic at hand. The 0-10 elephant in the room. The 4th 10-game losing streak over the last, I think, calendar year at this point.
Third.
I'm sorry. Third. It feels like 4, but regardless, let's give it a round of applause. I mean, that's quite the accomplishment in today's NHL. I'll be honest. Not a good one, but nonetheless.
D plus isn't a grade they like to give out all that much.
Right. You're right. I wouldn't even say D plus at this point. I mean, because Christ, 10 straight losses. Good God. I didn't think it would get to this. I was trying to be as optimistic as possible, and I could see 5, 6, maybe 7 games in a row given the team. 10 games though, man. It's the double-digit losses here. And Hoagie, give me your general, I'm assuming it's just flat out disappointment. Give me your general thought on the 10-game skid here.
I'm not even having fun anymore. I can barely sit through a first 10 minutes of a game. It's just decimated hockey. Surprisingly, we're out shooting some opponents, but the play is just shoved down our throats in the first 10 minutes. And it's just we can't sustain any offense whatsoever. It's not fun for me anymore.
I don't think it's fun for anybody at this point. But what about you, Casey? Like, give me your general takeaways from the fact that the Flyers have once again lost 10 games in a row.
It's unacceptable. I'm with Hoagie. I'm not having fun. I don't look forward to games anymore. I dread it, yet I still feel obligated to watch them. And it's almost like I want to sear this into my memory for someday when we're actually doing well. I'll be like, oh, remember how miserable that was? But I've been saying that for 3 seasons now, and it hasn't gotten any easier. I'm upset by the 10-game losing streak. What I'm not upset with, and where I differ from you a little bit here, Hoagie, is I do still think there's an effort there. I think that there's simply a lack of talent, and there was a lack of talent with a full roster, or we have a lack of talent with a decimated roster. We have arguably our top 2 lines when it's said and done, out. So that means that 6 AHL level forwards are now playing in the NHL on second and third line matchups here. And God forbid Kevin Hayes plays on the 4th line, which he has. Who's that putting up there? So I'm not happy with it, but at the same time, I understand why it's happening a little bit more. And I don't think it's a question of effort now, but it also, on the flip side, it makes me so much more pissed off. And I said this like a couple weeks ago about like the last 2 years, how it was so clearly effort that was the issue. And, so I hope we snap out of it. You got to go just one period at a time, starting with tomorrow night. You can't look ahead into the schedule there.
Here's my take on all this, and you can take some positives in the fact that we're getting production from guys that we just weren't anticipating getting production from, but the fact remains that with the team constructed the way it is, the production has to come from somewhere. So like it tempers things a bit for me, because it's like, oh great, like Sedlak is scoring, or like awesome, we're getting contributions from Delorier and this and that, but it's like, on this team, Delorier is a second or third liner, whereas he should be a fringe 12th, 13th forward on most. Mm-hmm. So like, I can't even get too excited about that. Mm-hmm. And I just, man, like I broke down a bunch of numbers over this 10-game losing streak, and Hoagie's right. Like, he brought up the fact that we are out shooting opponents. 6 of the 10 teams we've outshot. And we have a +7 shot differential. Like, yeah, it's 7 shots, big effing deal. But like, it amazes me because some of the games that we got outshot, like we're talking, let's see here, they were close. Like the one that sticks out is Washington. We got outshot 32-23. Calgary 30-25. Only outshot by 3 shots against Montreal. But the same thing with Boston, and that was to be expected. We got outshot 32-23 on that one as well. Mm-hmm. But like the ones that we did outshoot, we're talking 38-27 against Ottawa, 38-31 against Dallas. The only other one that really there's any somewhat of a gap is the Islanders game, 28-23, and that's only 5 shots. Like, mm-hmm. I'm not as disappointed at that because they've been doing a really good job of blocking shots. They're one of the better teams in that area. The big thing that sticks out to me, one of 2 things, we'll get to the second, but the special teams, man.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's bad. 2 for 29 on the power play, 18-27 on the penalty kill, 6.9% is not nice when it comes to the power play, and 66-67% on the penalty kill. Is that sustainable? But like, Matt Casey, I know that was a ton of info. Like, your thoughts on all that?
Yeah. So the shot stuff, I don't know, man. I don't put a ton of stock in the shots because I think a lot of the shots that we're getting, some of them are out from the outside. Like, you can fire it into the goalie's glove from the blue line, and it still counts as a shot. Not all shots are created equal. But with that said, I do think we are getting chances. We don't have guys that are either at the phase where they're skilled enough in their career, or they simply don't have that finishing touch skill in order to capitalize on all these. Like, I think we can all say that the silver lining in this, if you can pull one, is, hey, Owen Tippett has actually proved that he can play. He can play, he can score, he's got a good shot. a year ago or, last year when he came over in the Giroux trade, how many breakaways did that guy have that he couldn't finish? And I'm still not saying he's finishing but, I think he's somebody that stepped up in there. So, like, I don't know, long-winded way, like, the shot stuff, I get it. I think it is intriguing that we are, in the grand scheme of things, out shooting opponents, and that's a good thing. I look at overall, like, the eye test. And Hoagie, you play hockey still, and I assume you played growing up. Like, what my coach always preached to me when I was in high school is, like, we want to be in a position to win in the third period. That means either you're tied, down by a goal, or leading. And I think, with the exception of maybe 2 or 3 games, we've been in that position to win in the third period. I think Pittsburgh was out of hand, and maybe
early.
It was out. Which one?
Well, the Pittsburgh game, we were down early.
Yeah.
Wasn't the Islanders close?
The Islanders was close, I believe so. I think they were only down 1 maybe going in, or tied even.
No, we were tied. The game the other night, we were tied. We were tied going into the third, and I swear to God, I was like, oh, tied going into the third. I flip it on. They scored 2 goals within 20 seconds. I was like, no, turn it off. Turn it off. So I still think we're there. Like, and that's where, like, the effort is. We can't finish the games, and God forbid it goes to overtime or a shootout. We're toast. Like, that is where the skill really is shown. But I don't know, man. I'm the numbers don't totally astonish me. Hoagie, I'll kick it over to you for the power play and man down stuff.
What's there to talk about power play? Come on now. We've been screaming for a brand new power play for the past year. You just made me really angry. It's the thing that really makes me really pissed off about the power play is the slingshot. It doesn't do anything for us. We can't even enter the zone on a slingshot. We can't enter the zone on anything. But I mean, we've been screaming for changes. What's his name still? Is Terrian still coaching the power play? Because we were talking about that just about a year ago.
Oh boy.
I mean, penalty kills, they speak for themselves because we just don't have the talent to do it. The power play, we don't have those top line guys to produce on the power play. And we don't have our penalty killers in the lineup either.
Unfortunately, they're the same people. They're the same 5 guys.
Right. And that's a big point.
They're not there.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point, and something I wanted to touch on is the fact that we don't have the guys that are pinned as our power play guys, our penalty kill guys. Like, we are sorely lacking in both of those departments. And like, another thing that stuck out to me was the fact that there were 4 games in which the Flyers had 4 or more power play opportunities and they were blanked on. Dallas, they had 6 opportunities a man up and could not convert on 1. Like, then you look at the Columbus game, they went 1 for 2. The Boston game, they went 1 for 4. They scored a power play goal against Boston of all teams. Like,
right.
Yeah.
That was a pretty goal too.
Absolutely.
I was in the corner for that one. That was beautiful.
Oh yeah. But like, those are 2 consecutive games right there. They went, 0 for 9 in the first 3, and then the remaining, over. And the penalty kill, Jesus Christ, dude. I'm admittedly a dork when it comes to special teams. I like analyzing the numbers, the trends, and things like that. It's just bleh. Like, I don't know how else to put it. It is just bleh.
Yeah. I think that the special teams in general, like power play, okay, we can make the excuse that the offensive talent isn't there. I think we how many of the guys on this team, like, we're probably pinned as penalty killers in some way, shape, or form. We still have some in there. Like, I don't see it as much of an excuse on the penalty kill for us being that awful. Yes, we're missing Atkinson, and TK was looking good, and Couturier is one of the best in the league if he ever is healthy again. But you still have guys that are, like, made to play the penalty kill. Like, and that's what 3rd and 4th line guys can thrive in. And so for it to be that bad is tough. And you see it too sometimes, that sometimes it's just as easy. It's a failed clear 9 times out of 10 by Sanheim that, like, ends up, in the back of our net. And it gets just incredibly frustrating. With like they have to get it into a 6x6. You have to just get it out of your zone. That's it. That's all you have to do. And I get it. It's talented people, but for the penalty kill to be that bad, forget about the power play. For the penalty kill to be that bad is not going to result in any sort of success for this team.
No. And I think the last thing I really wanted to well, I should say of two, like we can make this a quick one, but the 10 games, the Flyers have been outscored 45-20. That's a negative 25 goal differential. To be expected, I guess, is the best way to put it. Like, yeah, I mean, and the fact that we're seeing Carter Hart come back down to earth, and by coming back down to earth, I mean literally crashing back down to earth. He was 7 appearances, 7 games, I should say, and he has an 869 goal save percentage. 26 goals against, making that a 3.93 goals against average. Sandstrom, not much better at all. 861 save percentage, 3.77 goals against. Like, we're getting bad goaltending right now. We are getting very bad goaltending right now. And I'm real quick to flip the coin here. I hate that about myself, but I'm not encouraged that Carter Hart's going to be able to. I'm not sure Carter Hart's going to be able to turn it around. Like, with the way this team is playing, the hit to the confidence with these last 7 games that he's played in. I mean, where do you stand on Carter Hart, Hoagie?
I mean, I actually think he's been our best player over the past couple games. That Boston game, he looked really good. Going to the third period, I think we were down 1-0, 2-0 or something.
We're down like down one. I think.
Yeah, it was like 1-0. He was dialed in that entire game, and we just talking to the guy next to me. No one was standing out for either team during that game, except for me, Carter Hart. He stood on his head, and I think he's been the one kind of keeping us in games to an extent, because look who's in front of him. I'm not even looking at the defensive guys. I'm looking at the offensive guys. He's got nobody to score for him. Like, he's standing on his head, and this is the result when we're having third and fourth line guys playing on our first and second line. Like, they're just not bailing them out like they should.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Casey?
Yeah, I'm not as down on him as you might be, but it hasn't been spectacular like we saw in the first 5 or 10 games, whatever it was. I think the issue is, and Tortorella keeps on preaching coaching of the mind and things like that. Like, I think we're all now trained after 3 years of this and now 10 games of it this season to say the other team scored first. Shocker. Here we go again. And God forbid we fall down 2. I mean, to our credit, we've come back from a lot of 2-goal deficits, including that Columbus game, doing it twice. But you can't do it. You can't do that. You can't keep chasing the game night in and night out. Like, if we ever had a 2-goal lead, I bet we would actually close it down pretty decently. Like, I think we would just play structured hockey. We'll see. I don't know if we'll ever get there, but we'll see. So I think Hart is probably no exception to that. And, we all know that the mental work, and he works with, a sports psychologist regularly and has stuff written all over his equipment to keep him grounded. And, like, hey, that's a different animal, man. Goalies are different beasts, that's for sure. But, I think in the back of his mind, how do you not be like, oh God, they just scored. Like, I know my guys aren't going to be able to be, to make up that goal. Like, stupid me. Like, I ruined the night again. And so I think he's left alone there on an island. But, I hope that he can see that this is a different losing streak than what we saw. And I'm going back to the shortened season, after the Winter Classic, which nobody could go to. Like, I'm going back to that where we just got slaughtered by everybody. Yep. We just went to the gauntlet. And that's when I saw Hart at his worst. I hope that trained him and got him mentally ready for something like this, where it's like, this is unpleasant. It sucks. But, like, just taking it one period, one shift, one shot at a time, and not trying to like make up 10 games in one period is something that hopefully he's looking at.
Yeah, I can hope, and I do think that there is a path for him to redeem himself, but it is a very difficult path based off of the fact that he gets no goal support.
Right.
I mean, like I mentioned,
perfect. He has to play perfect.
He does. The Flyers are averaging 2 goals a night over these last 10 losses here. Mm-hmm. So, you give up 3 goals, stats say you're probably going to lose the game, and that's I'm sure that in the back of his mind, he's thinking exactly what you just said, Casey. He's like, well, I just let one past me. Like, I'm an idiot and I'm not going to get any support here. I just blew it. And that has to weigh on him. And I feel for the kid. You can only ask him to do so much after the way he started this season, stealing games for them left and right.
Yep. Yeah. For sure. What do you, right. How do we get out of it? Not to transition, but how do we get out of it?
We win a goddamn game. Like,
have you looked at the upcoming schedule?
That seems easy. Hoagie brings up a great point. I don't know when that next win's going to be.
It's going to be tough. It might be Sunday, December 11th against Arizona. And I say might because who knows?
Oh, boy. That's how long we have to wait?
Yeah.
Call me an optimist, guys. I say we break it tomorrow night. I think we're actually going to break it tomorrow night. I think we played the Islanders incredibly tough on Saturday night, and we were both coming in on back-to-backs. But I don't know, a day of practice, a day off. I just feel like hopefully they come out with a little burn in them and ready to go.
I hope you're right. I really hope you're right.
I do too.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we go for the longest losing streak of all time. That's a nice record.
What is that?
I don't want to know. I don't.
Okay.
Dude, I think it may have been Buffalo 2 or 3 years ago. I think they lost 19, and then they broke it against us.
Yep, that's what it was.
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly what it was. Go effing figure.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. All right, well, switching gears from the on-ice stuff, you could say, there was some interesting I don't want to necessarily call it back and forth here, but there was a fuss raised in the Twitter world in regards to some comments Tortorella made after the one game earlier this weekend. And it kind of it resonates with me coming from, working in the media, working, with a news outlet that, a majority of what I did, I was covering sports and the Hershey Bears in particular. But I figured it's a good discussion in regards to obviously what we do. And, people that are in the press box, that have been there, and just kind of overall a discussion. That's really what it is. There was questions asked in regards to, specifics, and Tortorella at first glance, and according to some viewpoints, was kind of short with the answers, very kind of dismissive, saying I'm not going to get into it. Further looking at it in the context of the whole situation, to me, I don't have a problem with it. And I know a lot of the people listening right now, I'm sure, understand exactly what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. If you don't, obviously it's out there. Go check it out. There was just a blurb about it. But I mean, Casey, give me your take on this and what you think, whether Tortorella was in the wrong or if this is just being completely blown out of proportion.
Yeah. So I have I've worked at news outlets, including national sports outlets, and I'm still in the sports media space beyond this. Contextually, a beat writer is different than a journalist. And I hate to put it that way, but a beat writer is there to get the stats, the quote, on a daily basis. A journalist, this wasn't a, oh my God, we scored an interview with John Tortorella kind of thing. They talk to this guy every single day, and all the beat reporters who are credentialed can do so. I had zero issue with the question that they asked him, which, I think it was, do you remember the exact question? I don't know what it was, quite frankly.
Which one?
They asked 2 right in a row, but
the first one was going into the third period, tied 2-2. What happened in the span of 22 seconds when things got away?
Okay. And then was there a second one on top of that?
Second one, it looks like he cut off. He said, question was going back, special teams, power play has struggled, penalty kill, and he cut him off saying, I'm not criticizing my hockey team tonight.
Right. So, at first glance, you're like, okay, that's a little short. I don't have a problem with the questions. I also have zero problem with Tortorella saying, hey, I'm not going to talk about that right now. The guy just lost 10 games in a row. He's pissed. He's emotional. He does not owe it. Somebody has to give a press quote. He doesn't owe it to give them a long dissertation on the inner workings of his mind and of the team in there. Having watched the clip in full, which is only like a minute and a half or 2 minutes long, like it's short. You can see, I don't think there was any disrespect there from Tortorella. I think it was clear he was pissed. I think it was clear he was annoyed that he had to answer the question twice, and he wanted to get out of there. Where I have an issue with it is basically airing dirty laundry on social media. And that is where, again, no problem with the journalist questions, no problem with Tortorella's answers to it. I have an issue with them trying to make a bigger deal out of it on social media. And I think their quote, the journalist quote was, oh, it's very tough to do our job. It's like, guess what? If it was freaking easy, everyone would do it. To quote, a league of their own. It's the hard that makes it great, for God's sakes. But if you, again, this isn't like we scored an exclusive interview with Putin behind enemy lines. Oh my God, I can't believe he gave us short answers. We didn't get anything. It's like you have media availability with this guy 7 days a week. Like it is every single day with the exception of an off day. So I don't know. I have an issue with how it was treated on social media. I think they probably saw a pretty serious backlash on their end on how they portrayed it. And on the flip side, Tortorella today gave a solid 15-minute long interview on a practice day where I thought he was incredibly insightful, and he honestly rewarded somebody asking smart questions. He's like, that's a really, really good question. So I don't have an issue with Tortorella. I don't have an issue with the journalists. I have an issue with airing dirty laundry on social media, trying to use that as clickbait.
Yeah. Well put. What are your thoughts on the interaction there, Hoagie?
I could give two craps. I'll be honest. Like Casey said, they're airing out dirty laundry. You know who Tortorella is as a coach and as a person during these media availabilities. He's short. He's to the point. He doesn't want to stand there and air something out for you to kind of – he doesn't want to lob up a softball pitch for you to smash a home run off of. He wants to keep it short. He wants to keep on going with his night and break it down how he breaks it down. He's a video guy. Yeah, he sees everything out on the ice during the game, but he likes to go back, watch the video, time in and time out, pause, play, break it down how he breaks it down. The way they treated it is brutal. It kind of stung me the wrong way, when they were like, he absolutely refused to answer us and let us do our jobs. And this it hit me the wrong way when I was doing post game articles for our website when we had it running. Yeah. I didn't have media availability. I ran with the questions that were answered in just a regular post game video that I had available to me and the transcripts.
Yeah,
I was writing about the game. I'm not writing about what they're saying. I'm writing about the game and breaking down the game. That's your job.
I think the big thing is too that when you're a reporter in general, I'm not even going to differentiate between a beat reporter and a journalist. When you're a reporter and you're reporting on something, you typically have some sort of preconceived notion as to how you want the article to go. Because as the game goes on and let's say you're just doing a general recap, that's what your focus is. You talk about what happened during the game. You talk about the 2 goals in 20 seconds. You talk about them trying to stave them off, whatever it might be. You ask questions to get the answers that you want. And that's fine. That is absolutely fine. But when you don't get the response that you get, typically, in my experience at least, and what I liked to do without pushing too far, is to, ask a follow-up, prod a little bit, test the waters. Don't be for lack of a better term, don't be a dick about it. But at the same rate, try to make sure that your intentions are clear in what, answer you're looking for and things like that. The fact that, yes, like they did follow up with another question, I think that was well played on their part. They absolutely have the right to do that and should. I think that Casey's point hits the nail on the head. The fact that you're going to air this out on social media really paints you in a negative light, because it does one of two things. It shifts the positive focus away from what you're trying to do, which is never good. And it also impacts it could potentially, I should say, impacts your relationship with the team now. Because like you had said, Casey, this is an everyday thing. They're around the team every single day for practice, for games, everything. You don't think Tortorella is going to see them again? I mean, who was the reporter that he had it out for in New York? There was like a daily back and forth with this guy until the one day Tortorella just snapped. And like he was pissed at him. Like, but you know the clips. I forget the guy's name, but it was just daily back and forths. And I'm like, you don't want to paint yourself as that type of guy or that type of individual.
Like a Voracek-Sealski rivalry there.
Exactly. Nobody wants that.
You little weasel.
Nobody wants to be the Sealski here. Like, and that shouldn't be the goal. If it is the goal, then you're in it for all the wrong reasons. But the grievances being aired on Twitter rubbed me the wrong way. And in general, too, I mean, having written countless articles amongst all of us here, you never form your story. Well, I shouldn't say never, but when recaps especially, you don't need to form your story around quotes. Like a recap is a recap. It's to tell you how the game went, why it went that way. And sure, quotes can absolutely help your story, can help your article move along and paint the picture of how the game went with a coach recapping it. You never have to make it about one single quote. That's what, your Jordan Halls can do with NBC Sports, when he's doing pieces on guys, coaches, players, whatever it might be. Like, those are profile pieces, like talking to players, getting quotes, one-on-ones. Media scrums aren't the setting for that, in my opinion. And again, maybe I'm out of touch. Maybe, I'm wrong. If I am, I'd love to have a discussion about it. But that's my 2 cents on this all.
I think there's also, we're obviously talking about a dying-ish medium in the print landscape, which is where the Inquirer is fueled. And they made a conscious effort to get rid of their experienced reporters in lieu of younger, cheaper, more inexperienced reporters. And we can, we give Carchidi crap, but you know what? That guy's grinded it out for decades, man.
Yeah.
And like, you know what? At the end of the day, I still read his articles on whatever his website is. And like, you know what? I trust Sam. I think he does his job. He grinds it out, like no big deal. But I just don't think, not to crap on your guys, but like, I'm a millennial by 5 days. I'm like the old. I'm the host monkey of millennials.
Senior millennial.
And so, the idea of it makes our job harder. Like, tough shit. His job isn't there to make your job easy. His job is hard enough as it is. If you want to complain, then go talk to the Flyers PR people. Like if you want something, you want another quote, fine. You can have a high executive in the Flyers office says this if the story is that important, or ask one of the players. You have player availability too. And so I don't know. I look at it as, again, I don't have an issue with the way that the two reporters treated the interview. I don't have an issue with Tortorella's response. I have an issue with the way that they tried to sort of create drama, and successfully so, on social media.
Yeah.
And we've also heard, Flyers people in the organization, they monitor this stuff on Twitter. They know what we're talking about. So I'm sure they saw it all aired out.
It makes you wonder, though, like how they could potentially handle something like this internally. If it's something that, I don't want to necessarily call it like a black eye for whatever organization they're affiliated with, but like if this is something that persists, I mean, heaven forbid, next game, this happens again and Tortorella's a bit more unpolite. Yeah. Like, I mean, you can only expect so much from this guy too after 10 losses, and you can kind of shifting gears a little bit. Like you can kind of tell that there are things Tortorella wants to say, but he can't. And I think he's being very picky with what he says when it comes to criticizing the team, their play. He won't criticize their effort, which is fantastic. I think that's great of a coach. You know, when you do that, I think that really messes things up.
What a stark contrast from AV just throwing Carter under the bus, huh?
Right.
Like if we ever saw that from Tortorella, I'd be like, wow. Like Carter Hart must have, like, you know, been chasing butterflies or something because you know he won't do it.
Mm-hmm. That's I don't know if you guys can hear that banging. That's my son who won't go to sleep. He's figured out how to bang his crib against the wall.
Did you lock him in his room? Is he like, let me out of here?
At this point, I want to. I mean, this kid does not fall asleep. But no, I mean, we don't want to spend too much time on it. We don't want to, you know, badmouth this person, that person, whatever. Situation was what it was. It's just the way that it was handled afterwards. I think a lot of us had an issue with, and I've seen myself. I'm sure you guys have too. Others in the media with other websites, organizations that kind of were a little off put by it as well. Yeah. So it's interesting to see how it did unfold and all of that. But you know, kind of harping on Torts, and if you want to call it interviews as well, there was an interesting bit, I should say, an interesting interview in terms of when he was on NHL on TNT. Tocchet, I believe it was Biz too. They were all talking and asking him questions about the. I think it was after the Pens game. And
sorry, can I interject real quick?
Oh yeah,
how bad are Tocchet and Biz?
Like they're terrible. They're terrible. I hate when
I have to turn off. I have to turn off the intermission, like because I'm like they hate each other, and I you guys aren't good. Get out. Sorry, proceed, Derek.
Am I just not watching it enough? Like I don't share in that.
They're terrible.
They're terrible. I can't stand Biz just from a person standpoint. But when he's on national television before, like pre-intermission lives and post games, I'm like, I can't listen to him anymore.
I see the appeal. Like I don't see how you don't see the appeal, but at the same rate, like I could understand.
I completely understand why they put him in that position because he has a very successful podcast. He's kind of well known in right. He's kind of well known in the NHL community now of just being a pillar somehow, but like not on NHL on TNT. I mean, when he's sitting next to Wayne Gretzky, it's just like
podcasting is a bit different than, you know, being an actual analyst of the game. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I wouldn't cut it. I know that for a fact. But it was an interesting exchange, I guess might be the best word for it, because there were a few questions fired Tortorella's way. And his responses, I think, are absolutely worth a discussion in regards to some things he said. And I'll kind of start going like, you know, from beginning to end here. But when he was originally asked a question in regards to like the NHL these days and how things are, his response was somewhat to the effect of saying, so, you know, everything's so sensitive nowadays. And how you can lean on a player, what the expectations are. And he goes on to mention that his job, to him at least, is to push athletes to areas that they're not comfortable in to make them better players. So with that mentality in mind, I guess my question would be, I'll go to you first, Hoagie. Do you agree with that type of mentality? Because a lot of what we're going to get into is going to kind of, to me at least, paint a picture in how Tortorella views his job with the Flyers here.
I agree 100% with what he said there. You got to make a player uncomfortable. That just makes them better. You throw them into a position where they're not used to playing, and it just makes them a 100% all-around player in the long run, as long as they continue to like succeed at it little by little. I like that. And I think Tortorella is now kind of shifting his focus as an NHL coach, where back in the day it was his way or the highway. I think now he's bending to the new younger NHL.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think that's a good point. What are your thoughts on it, Casey?
I agree with it. I mean, wholeheartedly that, Tortorella, if Tortorella was a 33-year-old first-time coach, I'd be like, okay, Hardo, take a rest. But Tortorella, he's a Stanley Cup winner. He's had success everywhere, asterisk Vancouver. At most places where he's gone in building franchises that were arguably in shambles and building them into, you know, powerhouse contenders. And so I think, Hoagie, I think you're right. My way, the highway thing is probably gone, and that's probably what he had in the Tampa years. But as human beings, we grow. We learn from our mistakes. We learn from our successes. Like you learn from other people. He talked ad nauseum, in the preseason, how much he learned just by watching last year. He was announcing last year for ESPN, I guess. And he just being able to watch other games, watch coaches, and I think that's the sign of somebody who's becoming much more of a leader and more comfortable in his skin. I think that his pedigree is there to a point where he deserves the benefit of the doubt with his coaching style and the way that he proceeds with it. And if it means people are uncomfortable, it means people are uncomfortable. And he had a pretty revealing quote in his media availability today where he was like, we're trying to find out who fits, but we're also trying to find out who doesn't fit. And Hoagie, you did the optimist aspect. It's like, as long as they keep on thriving, great. If they end up, wiltering away,
Right.
and, you think we have a great 3C that could potentially be a 2C one day, and then all of a sudden he gets moved to wing, and then all of a sudden he still can't score, and
and he's benched in the second period.
Hypothetically, we'll call him M Frost. No, that's too obvious. Morgan F. Then if that's just as important, is knowing who isn't going to fit. And if this is a year of anything, it's going to be figuring out what pieces are right. But overall, I have zero problem with the mentality that Tortorella has.
I'm in the same line of thought. I think that, yes, like nowadays it is a bit more sensitive in regards to how you can lean on players, because you've got the instances in other sports where it's like, who was it? Mike Leach locked a player in a closet or something like that.
Yeah.
Sure. It's a little bit extreme. But
but also Mike Leach was a bonehead because he locked an ESPN announcer's kid in the closet. Like, what do you think of that?
Smart about it. If it's gonna be somebody, it should be like a Morgan F. But regardless, like when he goes on and says about how pushing athletes, like, and maybe it's just me being kind of a, for lack of a better term, an idiot, but like it reminds me of how it seemed like we were trying to make everybody that came up to the NHL for the Flyers into a 200-foot player. Like, we didn't need a goal scorer. We didn't need a physical presence. We needed everybody to be a 200-foot player. And it's like, at this point, we're putting round pegs in square holes. Like, that doesn't work. I think that you want to push these guys to be uncomfortable, but to a point where you're emphasizing their skill set. You're not trying to make them into something that they're not. You can make them uncomfortable, and you should, in my opinion. But that uneasiness and that comfortability, or lack of comfortability, I should say, should come from pushing them to be better at what they're good at, as opposed to maybe harping on things that, like, okay, we have an Alex Ovechkin. The guy's never going to win a Selke trophy, and I can live with that if he brings me 5 or 6 Rocket Richards.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with him on that, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. The second quote that he brings up, that I thought this was hilarious. I think this was probably the whole premise of the interview there. He was asked about the league and how, it's different now as opposed to when he was with the Lightning in his early on tenure there. He goes on to say that it's a young, dumb league, and that there's so many more mistakes being made now than back in the day. He used to be like a dot the I, cross the T type guy, which I'm sure we can all understand and agree with, and almost forecast the game before it even happens. But he said that you need to live through some of those mistakes for these kids to mature. And I think that should be one of the more telling statements that he made during this interview, living through those mistakes, because there's a lot of them right now.
Mm-hmm.
So taking all that and what was said there with that quote, Casey, like, what do you think about, I guess you could say Tortorella's viewpoint and how you perceive what he said?
Yeah. In an ideal world, what you're hoping is you have 2, maybe 3 of these guys up right now. And I'm talking like the Cates, Allison, Bellows. He's pretty underwhelming. Lashinsky, even Frost. Yeah, like you have a couple of these guys up on a team that is solid enough where you can say, okay, I'm going to bury you on the 3rd line, maybe the 4th line. And if you make a mistake, it's not going to be the end of the world. Right now, the way that this team is and the way that everything is slotted is a lot of these guys are playing 2nd line, some of them 1st line minutes. And the mistakes are just amplified because you're going up against the best players in the world. And you just, you've cut your teeth in the AHL for the last couple of years and haven't really had time to marinate. And so I think the mistakes are happening. I think it's a combination of, yes, youthful dumb mistakes. It's a combination, combine that with the injuries and forcing people to slot up the lineup where those mistakes just become utterly amplified. Again, it's happening all at once right now. All these guys are happy. It's all happening at once instead of being able to be covered up in a better team. I would love to fast forward 2 years from now, because I think in the long run, most of these, a lot of these guys probably won't be here a year or 2 years from now. But, I'd love to see what they end up being, because this is going to be a valuable experience. Be like, man, that was tough going against Ovechkin. But you know what? When Noah Cates is slotted properly on a 3rd line, you're like, oh, this isn't as bad. Like, I can handle this. And so I think it's a little trial by fire right now, and you're just seeing mistakes. Where I'm more worried is that you're also seeing mistakes with specifically our defensemen who are seasoned guys. And you're like, dude, what are you guys doing? Like,
and they're the most seasoned guys out of everybody on the roster.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think the youth mistakes is one thing, but I'm more concerned about the veteran mistakes, which you're just like, it's tough to sugarcoat that one, Torts.
Yeah,
sure. What are you thinking, Hoagie?
This is where John usually says, "Oh, not much," but
Good point.
I mean, like you said, we have a lot of mistakes, and we have a lot of young. We got to work out the kinks, and like Casey said, probably next year or 2 years from now, a lot of these players might not be here. I mean, we're rocking a 2nd line right now of Tippett, Frost, and Bellows. That is not a 2nd line in the NHL right now.
Right.
I like the line, but I don't like it as 2nd line minutes. I'd rather that as a minimal 3rd line. Kind of let them figure it out, because I think they have the tools to make it work. I just don't think they have the tools. They're equipped with the right tools to make it work right away. So you just got to let it bend and let it break a little bit, and then fix it and keep on working. I think right after that question, I think Tortorella came back with there is no coach's handbook.
Yep.
You just have to kind of roll with the punches and coach with your gut, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, and that was the next quote that I wanted to get into before my response, because I've got to respond here because I'm selfish and self-centered. But oh, come on, man, come on.
Oh, sorry. Ooh.
You got to get your digs in while you can. I get it.
Gotta try.
No, I think it's interesting because it does appear that Tortorella has a bit of a longer leash when it comes to these players than AV did with them, I should say. Like, I think there is more of an understanding on Tortorella's end that, yes, the roster as constructed is bad. So these kids are going to be playing in a role in which, one, they're not accustomed to, and two, they're likely not going to be asked when this roster is optimized and we have people back and we have the players in place that we want to have in place. So that longer leash, I think I understand it, because of like what Casey said. Like you've got kids right now that are playing in a role that really they shouldn't be. But like when everything settles down and people are healthy again and the lineup is what it should be, Noah Cates is going to go from, centering the second or first line to potentially centering the third or playing wing on the third, whatever they deem fit. I think they'll probably keep him at center. Maybe put Lawton on the wing on that third. I'd kind of like that. I think that's a solid third line. But like I think that Tortorella has a better understanding of where this team is headed than AV did. AV wanted success. That's why, it seems like he rushed Hayes back. It seems like he rushed Ellis back. He wanted the team to be good, which is what they should have been. Tortorella understands that this team's going to be bad. And he's playing chess right now with these kids, putting them in places that he has to, but also understanding that they can take a step back when people are healthy and put them in roles in which they will likely thrive in, as opposed to what they're in now, which is hopefully temporary at this point.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. What's, speaking of that though, sorry, did you have more quotes there?
No, you're good.
One of the things that came out today was kind of are we now at a point where you do start calling up more and more of the younger guys? Like York. It seems like Zamula is going to play tomorrow night, and good for him. From what I understand, Tony D had a maintenance day, but should be good to go. So likely Braun coming out, which okay, that's fine by me. But you look at somebody like Anisimov, who's playing in the AHL, but like we need centers when we
gotta sign him first,
and we don't have the roster space.
Yeah.
Well, TK's on long-term IR now.
Yeah, to make room for Zamula.
So I think that things like that. Like, is it worth doing that to just stabilize the team, or do you just start calling up guys left and right? And I think it's I don't know if I have a strong opinion one way or the other, but interesting debate that's happening.
I think it's tough because at the same time you have to worry about getting some of these guys experience. You also have to worry about juggling in player development. And is it going to be best for some of these kids to come up? Is it going to be best to subject Cam York to this when, if he's playing top pairing minutes in Lehigh Valley, why pull him away from that to play in a third pairing capacity?
And he's playing them well too.
Exactly.
He's playing very well in the AHL. So I'd rather him marinate down in the AHL this season. And John and I have had this conversation multiple times with a couple of the players in the AHL. Your Tyson Foysters, your Elliot Denoyers, Cam Yorks. Like, if they're playing well down there, keep them down there because you don't want them to run into this train wreck of an NHL team,
right?
And make detrimental mistakes that might kill their development going forward. I think we saw that a little bit with Cam York last year, and I think he's responding in a good way by being sent down this year, and it'll just be so much more beneficial to this club going forward if we just keep him down there. And I've also noticed, like, if Tyson Foerster gets called up, he's staying up because he's just at another level, and I don't want that quite yet because I don't want to waste the talent right now.
Well, like, it kind of preaches to Tortorella's approach that he kind of covered in that interview where he had mentioned about, like, there needs to be conversations with the player, like specifically and individually with each player, give them the room that they need, but also let them know that at certain times, this is the way things are going to be. And we feel that that's the best for the club as a whole. So, like, that right there tells me a lot about Tortorella's view of everything, like just his whole overview of the team, of how he's going to be as a coach. It shows us that he's demanding, but he's also understanding at the same time. So I think he, in this interview as a whole, to kind of surmise, because the last quote was about using your stomach, your eyes, and things like that. We kind of covered that. Like, this interview was very telling for me as to Tortorella's approach with things. And I think that we learned a lot about how he views it. I think we learned a lot about how he views players as well, like in terms of the younger ones, the older ones, and things like that. I thought it was just worth a great discussion because it, again, the impact of the interview and what he said pretty telling, in my opinion.
You know what else is pretty cool is Tortorella's just pure dedication to the sweater and tie.
He brought that up too.
It's pretty amazing.
He
what
said
did
it's
he say
cold out
about
there.
that?
He said, yeah, because I'm cold. And then Biz told him it's made of Kevlar for the way that he talks to officials.
I'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Right? No, the last, or I'm sorry, Hoagie, go ahead.
Did you guys happen to catch the Al Morgani interview on High and Wide? Shout out real
I
quick.
have not yet. I gotta check that out.
I would recommend it because Morgani brings out the fact that Tortorella is speaking more as like a general manager than a head coach at this point.
I did hear that clip.
And now that Morgani's pointed that out, I've noticed it more and more that he's kind of just speaking more professionally as that type of person and that type of role rather than the head coach. And I really appreciate that because he knows what he has, but he doesn't want to just come out and say it like he has on national television. We suck. That period sucked. Like, but I think he's reeling it in and keeping it tight to the chest because he doesn't want to beat down this team more than they're already being beaten down.
Or has he gotten a talking to from the higher ups?
Which higher ups?
Could be anybody.
Chuck's busy playing Tetris on his Game Boy, being like,
Chuck's sending out office memos.
There you go.
Yeah, like from here on out, we will not discuss that. He's hiding behind office memos at this point.
Yep.
No, we did want to touch too on just real quick the interview from here earlier today, where Tortorella, I think, covered a good bit, and there's a really interesting quote, and I think it's the quote that a lot of people are going to discuss in terms of his hate list. And in my mind, I'm picturing Steve Buscemi and Billy Madison with like the hit list on the wall. I'm just thinking to myself every time.
So explain what it is for the listeners who didn't hear it.
So from what I gathered and how he put it, there are instances during the season, during games, things like that he's keeping tabs on. And it sounds like to me that, hypothetically speaking, let's say they're coming out against the Islanders tomorrow and they're getting drubbed and it's 5-1 and there's 2 minutes left in the third. And the Islanders roll out their top line against the Flyers' fourth line. Things like that he's keeping tabs on, like certain players and certain coaches and the things that they do at times in the game that might not lend itself.
Matthews dangling, with
the Austin Matthews crap, that happened and him being a complete puss. But I think it's a genius thing. I think
you should do it. Yeah, absolutely. Like hands down. And
yeah.
Sticking with the Adam Sandler set, sadly enough, like I picture Bobby Boucher being like 56, 56, 56. There you are. And Torch is waiting for the moment where he can Bobby Boucher the fuck out of 56.
There it is. There's the F-bomb. We were waiting on it. It only took 58 minutes. It's like, that's my tackling fuel. It's bulletin board material. It's the NHL's version of bulletin board material. And he goes on to say that when the Flyers are in a position to turn the tables, he wants to return the favor in so many words, which again, I see nothing wrong with that. I think that's fantastic. He's keeping that mental note. He's like, yeah, like you said, like, there you are.
Yeah, that's the way it should be. Like and you know what, that if that doesn't fuel the rest of them, like, I don't know what the hell does.
So you already know Delorier has that list.
Delorier is the Steve Buscemi in this.
Yeah, he's got it in his locker. Got that one.
Right. You don't think that like before the next Toronto game, if Konechny's healthy, Tortorella isn't going to walk up to Konechny and be like, "Hey, buddy, do you remember what happened last time?" Like, I'm not saying take a run at the guy, but if you've got a shot, take it. Like,
right.
Oh yeah.
Not a dirty shot. I don't promote that, but pull a Giroux with a Crosby in the playoffs. Just steamroll him, like get off the tracks, and yeah.
Konechny's way too small for that.
Well, let's be honest.
I think that'd be more of a slash on the ankles kind of guy.
Right. Yeah, right on the ankle. But I could see him tossing like Konechny out with like I could see Konechny going out there with Delorier and McEwen and trying something like that.
And Sealer, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
here's the thing.
exactly.
If I'm Tortorella, I'm giving Konechny the option. I'm going to be like, listen, buddy, you're first on the list. If you want to go for it, go for it. If you're not, I got 2 pit bulls back here and Delorier and McEwen that are just going to gnaw him to shreds.
Yep.
It's like in The Godfather 2, and like where he's like, hey, Mike says if you can't take care of this, Fredo, I got to. And he's like, yeah, you better take care of it. And you got Rocco over there.
Right. But again, fantastic idea. And Hoagie, you didn't really get much talking time. I'm sorry. I don't want to be like John here.
That's fine. I missed the quote today, and I saw it in a group chat of the hate list. I was like, is he hating on the players in the locker room? Like, what is this about?
Like, got the list of guys he wants gone, and as they're traded at the deadline, he's just crossing them off.
That's what I thought it was at first. Now, glad I got some insight on it.
Yeah. No, all right. So if there's nothing else to really talk about, we spent an hour talking about this stuff. I can't believe we went this long. But we'll get to Hoagie here and hit us with your dad joke of the week.
I'm gonna skip the dad joke.
You are?
Yeah.
John's gonna be so disappointed.
I'm sure.
You know what? You know what it is, Hoagie? I think the dad joke is bad juju for the team. We haven't been good since you started the dad joke.
All right, let's nix it and let's see what happens.
Fair
Start the
point.
winning streak.
All right. Well, if they start winning, we can attribute it to the fact that Hoagie has ceased with the dad joke, and we'll continue not doing dad jokes if they win. If they do, though, if they do lose,
We'll keep
dad jokes coming right back. So that's a threat. That's a threat.
The Flyers are gonna bust their butt tomorrow night just to avoid the dad joke.
Right? Like, I want to hear that schmuck with his shitty dad jokes. All right. So in lieu of the dad joke, Hoagie, let everybody know where they're going to be able to find you.
Pod Street Hose on the Twitter app.
All right. And Casey.
Pod Street Casey on the Musk machine.
Anybody want to take over for John, or do you want me to close this bad boy out?
You can get this podcast and all of our various receptacles, including but not limited to Spotify, Apple, Pandora.
It's at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Amazon, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, Castbox, Google Podcasts. Google it, or just keep listening to what you're listening on.
I'd give that a B, maybe a B plus. That was good.
Passing grade.
Absolutely. Better grade than what the Flyers have got in the past 10 games. You can find me on Twitter at Pod Street Bob. John's on Twitter at Pod Street Gove. You can find all of us on Twitter at Pod ST Bullies. Check out our affiliates as well. Flyers High and Wide. They are on Twitter at Flyers HW, dropping a few episodes every week. Now that we're back in the swing of things, you've got our buddies over at the 5 Minute Major Podcast, David Mastro. They're on Twitter at 5 Min Major Pod, as well as our fellas over at the Hockey Focus. They are on Twitter at the Hockey Focus. Until next week, though, I will leave you
with a bye now.
Let's leave you. Bye now.